More now on the economy and how it may play out in this election year. Peter Schiff is president of Euro-Pacific Capital. He's been warning about problems in the U.S. economy for months. He joins us now from Stamford, Connecticut to discuss the issue. And first of all, thank you for the time. And you don't think the U.S. economy is headed for a recession. You think the country may already be in a recession. Is that right?
We are. It's only the government statistics that don't reveal it, because the government statistics actually inflate the GDP in two ways. One, they use hedonic adjustments to overcount a lot of things, particularly technology. And of course, we are understating inflation. The GDP deflator does not really reflect how much inflation is actually out there. So what happens is a lot of inflation gets reported as legitimate growth. That's not the case. We're in a recession. That's why I think you have this dissatisfaction among all the voters. That's why everybody wants change, because the current situation, recession and high inflation, is lousy.
Well, you've got a president in the White House who still says that although there are concerns in the economy, the housing sector, that things, by and large, the fundamentals are still pretty good. You challenge that notion, don't you?
Well, the fundamentals are terrible. In fact, they've probably never been worse for this nation in our history. I mean, we've just come off the biggest credit bubble in history. Americans have borrowed trillions of dollars from the rest of the world. We can't pay it back. Our asset prices now are tumbling. Assets have been sustaining all this debt. The rest of the world is now coming to grips with the reality that Americans can't pay them back, and our currency is going to plunge. And this whole phony economy, where we don't manufacture but we simply import foreign goods and pay for it with IOUs, is coming to an end.
I've heard a lot of economists say that they do have some concerns about the economy, certainly the credit crisis, the housing crunch, but you paint as bleak a picture as I've heard in a long time. What makes you so convinced things are so dour?
Well, I mean, first of all, if I go back at all the predictions I've made over the years, since they pretty much have all come true, it really reinforces. I mean, if people pick up, I wrote a book called Crash Proof, How to Profit from the Coming Economic Collapse, and that book came out in February of last year, and of course I wrote it the year before. But a lot of the chapters now read like history books, history lessons. So I've been very accurate on my forecasts for the markets, for the economy, for the dollar, for commodities, for gold, for oil. So that kind of reinforces me because I've been so right consistently for so long. But everything just seems to make sense to me. We had an economy. First we had a bubble in the NASDAQ, and when that deflated, the Fed blew up a bigger bubble in the real estate market, and Americans were able to borrow money against phony home equity and use it to buy things, a lot of imported goods. So we ran up a huge trade deficit. We borrowed trillions of dollars. Now these bubbles have burst, and everything that has been sustaining the American consumer is going away. And now, the government, Bush, is threatening to make it worse. He's talking about cutting taxes, which is going to just add to the problem, because they trade tax revenue for inflation. Instead of the government collecting money through taxation, they simply rely on the Federal Reserve to create the money out of thin air. And that's going to put more pressure on the dollar. That's going to cause oil prices to go higher and food prices to go higher, and compound the problem. We got into this mess because Americans spent too much money. We spent money we didn't have, and we borrowed to pay for it.
This is already turning out to be an election year issue. You've got the president, the administration talking about fiscal stimulus. You also have Democrats up on the Hill talking about fiscal stimulus, perhaps some spending to help the states at the local level muddle through over the next year or so. Again,
unfortunately,
how do you think this is going to play out in the political race? Are you making investment decisions based on how you think policy might evolve here in Washington?
Well, sure. Unfortunately, the big casualty of politicians on both sides trying to give away money and play Santa Claus is going to be the value of our money. The dollar is going to continue to sink, and U.S. assets are going to continue to lose value. And people need to get their money out of the country, out of the dollar, buy gold, buy commodities, buy foreign assets. And unfortunately, I think that this is going to work in the favor of the Democrats. I think they're most likely going to sweep the election, because I think by the time the election comes around, we will be deep in recession. Everybody will know that. And, the Democrats are the ones that are saying there are problems in the economy. Of course, they don't understand what those problems are, and they're clueless as to how to make it better. Their policies will make it worse. But unfortunately, the Republicans simply deny that there's any problem at all, and they pretend that everything is great. And that's not going to go over well with unemployed voters who can't afford to buy food or energy, and the mortgages are worth more than their houses.
You have suggested, have you not, that a recession might actually be a good thing. It might lead to changes in behavior, changes perhaps in government policy. What sort of changes would you like to see?
Well, of course, remember the bad thing was the artificial boom that the Federal Reserve created. The recession is the free market's way of purging the economies of those excesses. Our economy is malinvested. We can't have an economy where nobody saves any money and we keep buying imported products and run up these deficits. We need to correct that imbalance. We need to move back towards a manufacturing economy. We need to move back towards a savings economy. And that can't be done without a recession. You know, it's like if you're a heroin addict and you want to get healthy, you can't do that without going through withdrawal. The withdrawal symptoms are not fun, but the government's solution is shoot up with more heroin so that we can delay the withdrawal. But of course, they risk killing the economy with an overdose, which is what we might get. And an overdose, as far as fiscal monetary stimulus, is hyperinflation. And believe me, that's a real possibility, and we do not want to live through that.
All right, Peter Schiff with Euro Pacific Capital. We appreciate your views, your thoughts on the economy. Thanks very much. When we come back, we'll see how many of Wall Street's economists share Peter Schiff's outlook for the economy, our latest Bloomberg survey, after the break.